Hello, my name is Leighton Flowers. I'm the Director of Apologetics for Texas Baptist and a part of Soteriology 101. I wanted to take this time to answer some questions that people send to me on a regular basis. That way I don't have to answer it over and over and over again through email or Facebook or Twitter, those kinds of things. The first question I often get is Calvinism all you ever talk about? And I can understand why people might ask that question, given the nature of this particular blog and podcast. The second question I get quite often is, shouldn't you be worried about evangelism? Does this really even matter? Does this issue even matter? Should you really even be focused on this Calvinism thing? Don't we have bigger fish to fry, so to speak? Aren't there more important things for people to be talking about? Again, another question I completely understand, and I probably feel the same way if I was on the outside looking in as well. So I want to bring some clarity to this and just simply explain a few things. One, this is absolutely not all I talk about. I take a few hours every week to put together a blog and a podcast over this particular issue because, one, it's an issue that affected me pretty deeply. My church, my home church, split over Calvinism, and I was one of the Calvinists that helped split it. One of my dearest pastor friends, who I love dearly, matter of fact, just saw him a couple of weeks ago at my home church and just hugged him and again apologized for splitting his home church, the church he was in for 30 years. And it hurt my family and my brother's family and our friends and the people around us. And so it's a hard issue. It was an issue that really affected me. And I, as on the Calvinistic side of that debate at the time, I really felt like I was defending God's word. I really felt passionate about standing up for what I believed the truth of God's word was. And now I don't believe that I was correct. I felt like I made an error. And so there's a passion there. And I ended up writing my dissertation on this subject years later after coming out of Calvinism. And so, it's a focus that I've had in my ministry, much like a podiatrist focuses on feet. Nobody faults a podiatrist for posting a lot of articles and things on the foot because that's his area of study. That's his focus of study. Dr. David Allen, though he's a very well-rounded professor, and does a lot of work in both preaching and in theology. He has a book on the atonement. That's been an area of direct focus for him. He is a leading scholar in that field. That's true of any field of study. There's people who have a particular area of focus that they really like to unhash and to work out and to really dive deeper into. This happens to be my area of focus. And it's not my only area of focus. It's only a very relatively small amount of my week. In fact, I, as the director of evangelism, youth evangelism, for 13 years here as a part of Texas Baptist, I worked in overseeing Super Summer, the youth evangelism conferences, See You at the Pole, a nationwide prayer ministry that my dad helped to start back in the early 90s, and youth rallies, youth camps, conferences, Congresso with about 3,000 to 4,000 students in the state of Texas, Super Summer with 4,000 or 5,000 students that are affected with all that we do here in the state of Texas. As a part of Texas Baptist, I work on a team that's called the Great Commission Team. And on that team, we have different emphasis. There's the music department, there's the discipleship department, there's the evangelism department, and all of us are a team together that's really working to make the Great Commission a priority here in the state of Texas. And I, as a part of the evangelism team, am involved in apologetics. And so most of my time is spent on putting together apologetic ministries. We just had a conference not long ago in Corpus Christi, for example, with William Lane Craig and Mike Lacona and Mark Middleberg and Dr. Braxton Hunter and so many other great apologists that we love to work with and work. I just got off of the phone a few minutes ago trying to get a hold of the guy from Biola who is calling me to try to organize a coordination of an event together here in Texas with Biola. I'm on the phone with Ravi Zacharias' ministry and trying to get him scheduled to come to Houston next year. Prayerfully pray for that. This is what I spend most of my time coordinating, these kinds of ministry events and helping to do apologetics. At the annual meeting coming up this year in November, I'm going to be speaking, of course, on apologetics, and so I've been studying and reading some of Braxton Hunter's work, in fact, to prepare for my presentation on apologetics there at the conference. That's the heart of what I do in my ministry within Texas Baptist, and a part of the Great Commission team under Dr. Delvin Atchinson's leadership, and working with Joshua Del Risco, and of course our executive director, David Hartage, who is has a huge heart for reaching people and a huge heart for ministry in the state of Texas. And so that's where the bulk of my ministry is. And we're working with all kinds of outreach ideas, with the Prayer for Every Home, the 4x4 outreach evangelism ministries. All of these I've taught courses on and training on how to be a part of those with the local associations. If I could just show you all of those things on a regular basis, I would. But the truth of the matter is, I've compartmentalized my soteriology work to a particular blog and a particular YouTube page to kind of isolate that into one area of my work and my ministry. And therefore, those who know me by that work only know that work. And so be careful not to judge somebody based upon a single book they have written, upon a single podcast that they have produced, upon a single blog page that they have created. In fact, I'll put in the show notes a little satire piece that kind of played off the Babylonian Bee kind of stuff that you kind of hear going out. It kind of mocks a friend of the podcast, kind of mocks those who are trying to accuse me of, quote unquote, being a one-string banjo. My wife often tells me, I wish you only had one string, because of the fact that I spread myself a little too thin on occasion. And that's something I'm trying to actually work on. But in addition to my work with Texas Baptists, in addition to traveling and speaking on a regular basis on a wide range of topics, was at a camp, 2 camps this last summer. I've spoke at 4 or 5 retreats, men's retreats this year alone. I've also been involved in a lot of planning events and executive board meetings and things like that. That's a part of my regular schedule. I also teach as an adjunct professor of theology for Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary, who offers online webinar ministries courses. And so I teach one of those every week. And I also sometimes have taught for Dallas Baptist University. I'm not doing that currently. That's one of the irons I've taken off my fire. I don't have time for. I have 2 books in the works right now on 2 different subjects, which I'm not announcing yet because I'm still trying to figure out where those things are going. But this is more a part of my entire livelihood, I guess. And so there's a bigger picture than that. Now, to address the second part of that question, shouldn't you be evangelizing? Yeah, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, though. And I often ask people who really criticize this point, do you say the same things to people who spend hours on Sports Center or playing golf or fishing? I've told people one of my pastimes is theology. In fact, even when I'm watching the Cowboys, I usually have a theology book in my hand and I'm reading, and it drives people nuts sometimes because I'm just a theology geek. I just like reading theology books, and I like discussing theology and deep thinking. I don't know what it is about me. God made me that way. That's what I do for my pastime. And so I don't think you probably hold people to the standard that they need to be witnessing 24/7. But I am involved in planning evangelism events on a daily basis in my work. And matter of fact, a young man by the name of Carlos, I spoke to yesterday about his faith at Starbucks. I'm active in personal evangelism, and I rarely ever say that to people because it feels like I've always felt like kind of like you're trying to brag on things to make yourself look better than you are. I'm only saying this just to be able to give as an edification for people who think you seem imbalanced because it seems like this is the only thing you do in your life. And I understand that perception if you only know me based upon that one blog and this one podcast and those kinds of things. And so I'm trying to give you a more well-rounded picture of the actual individual to help you see that there's a lot more to me than maybe what you've been exposed to through this particular blog that's happened to become very popular. And a lot of people are downloading it and spread it through social media and those kinds of things. And so that's what I'm kind of, Leighton Flowers is being known as the anti-Calvinist guy. That's all he ever does and all he ever talks about. And I understand that perception, and I'm just hopefully trying to correct that perception from those who may have that misunderstanding of who I am and what I do and what really drives me. And then the last question in closing is, does it really matter? Well, and that's really for you to judge and you to decide for yourself. If you believe that the love of God and His character and his genuine desire for every single man, woman, boy, and girl to be saved, and his provision being made for every single individual is important to you, then yes. If that doesn't seem important to you, then maybe it's not. I can't imagine a more worthy topic than the doctrine of our salvation, the doctrines of God's grace and goodness and love and character, his provision, making known his glory. And as I've often said, I think God's much more glorified. What is glory? We're not making God any more glorified than he already is. He's already maximally glorious. We're just revealing him for who he is. We're just manifesting the character of God so as to bring him the knowledge of his already glorious nature to bear, to people know it. Well, what attributes of God are we making known in our world? And I believe God is made known and more glorious through his attribute of love. Because that's what he expressed upon the cross. And ultimately in the incarnation, what we see is the love of Jesus Christ, that his glory is not made known by the sacrifice of most humanity, i.e. the non-elect, for the sake of his glory, but his glory is best made known for the sacrifice of himself, for the sake of all unworthy humanity, his enemies. That's what brings him the most glory. So we want to talk about what's more important than bringing God glory. If you truly believe that the glory of God is best made known through his love and provision for every single person, then you're going to spend your life trying to glorify him and exalt him forever. That's what I'm trying to do. And I honestly feel, though Calvinists are well-intending, though I think they're good brothers in the Lord, though I think they really do believe they're exalting the glory of God in their doctrines and their teachings, because I used to think I was doing the same thing when I was one, I honestly believe they've just misunderstood several historical key points within the New Testament and some of the original intentions of the authors, and I want people to understand that. I wished I would have understood it instead of helping to split my home church and leading a lot of people, I think, astray in my own ministry for the first decade. And I would like for people to understand our perspective. I'm fine with people understanding Calvinism for what Calvinism truly is, but I also want them to understand traditionalism and what I've come to believe is the truth of God's word. And so I hope that you can respect and appreciate that. Blessings to you. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.